Are you looking to spend more time in your bag making and maybe look at downscaling your 9 to 5 job? Today, we might have some tips that could be helpful. Hi, I'm Jill, and welcome to Bag Chat. Today, we are talking to someone who has done just that. They have made a change in their career to be full-time in their bag making and sewing business. They teach at retreats, they organise retreats, an amazing quilter and an amazing bag designer. She has 20 patents to her name. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you might have a little hint. So it is Tara Sinclair of UhOh Creations. Welcome to Bag Chat, Tara.
Thanks, Jill. I'm excited to be here.
It's been a while getting our schedule sorted, but it is really cool. Now, if you didn't know, Tara is in Calgary in Canada, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep, with her dog Lincoln and lots of other exciting people in her life. Oh, you've got at your feet?
Yeah, he's right there. He's always in the sewing room with me.
Oh, that is cool. It's always good to have a great friend in the sewing room. So, as you know, I always ask my guests quick fire questions to start with. And the first one is always, how did you learn to sew?
Okay, so I did the right thing, people tell me, where I took a class. I went to my local quilt shop and decided that I was going to take a class on learning how to quilt, actually. And I got the machine, I got the fabrics, and I learned cutting, sewing, all the way to quilting and binding of the quilt. And it was a top to bottom class. So I did the right way, as I've been told. I learned from somebody. Now, back in high school, way back in the day, I did have home economics, and we did learn some basics around sewing. In fact, I think I still have the pillow I made that's in the shape of a note because I was a band geek. So I think that's still hanging around in a box downstairs. But
I'm really disappointed they've taken the home economic classes out of school here in New Zealand. It's just, it doesn't
that's
get in. Doesn't get in.
terrible. You know what? I feel really lucky because locally our high schools and junior highs still have the home ec classes. And my stepdaughter did take sewing around the same time that I was learning my quilting. And she loved her sewing class, loved it. She just did everything. It was amazing.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's great. So you learned to sew the right way. I love that.
Right.
So how did you transition into bags?
Well, quilts take a long time.
Mm.
And quilts is a very repetitive process when you're making the same block over and over again and then putting those blocks together. So my day job was already long projects and big projects that 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're still working on the same thing. So my quilts, 6 months later, I'm still working on the same thing. I needed quick wins. So I
Mm.
popped into my local quilt shop and I picked up a little bag kit, and it had all the interfacings and stabilizers and the button that goes on the front, and it was from Pink Sand Designs. And I got home, and within a couple of hours, I'd made this teeny tiny bag.
Oh,
And I'm
that's
like,
so
oh my
cool.
God, quick win. That's exactly what I needed in life.
Yeah,
So I went back that afternoon, got another.
yeah, I love that. But then you go from there to really long, drawn out bag patterns because then you need more of a win and more of a challenge.
And now you need a little challenge, and then you start hacking them, and now you've got like a 5 day process or a 3 week process. But never, okay, I can't say never. Generally, a bag does not take me 6 months to make, whereas I have a
No,
quilt on the go right now that I think I'm a year and a half, 2 years in
right.
because I focus on bags. So I don't spend a lot of time on it, but this November I will finish it. It is
You've got
ready
a
for
date.
finishing.
Right. That's exciting. So, okay, let's look at your quilting. Now, I have heard an interview done by a quilt person, and I was blown away with some of the things they showed from your quilting. So, tell us a little about your experience and your history in quilting.
So quilting, you know what, my mom also quilted. Um, she picked it up around the same time as me. And one of the things we loved to do more than anything was bounce ideas around with colors and changing up a pattern to adapt the colorway. Like this one that's right behind me here. This one is actually a pattern that I think is only two fabrics or three fabrics. And I color washed it. So
Right.
my approach to it is don't do anything anybody's already done. I,
I
I,
love it.
I, I've got to be different. And so my mom mocks me every time. I'll pick up a pattern and I'll be like, "Ooh, I really want to do this." She's like, "Do you? And what are you going to change?" And I'm like, "Mom," but she knows me.
Yeah.
So my journey in the quilt world, it never got really, really in depth, except for my dabbling. I just love to try new things. So there's this pattern out there right now that a ton of my friends are making. It's the exploding heart quilt, and it's just beautiful. It uses the half square triangles and it's just a ton of blocks. It's very straight line sewing, which is what I hate.
Okay.
I Whereas things like this one from So Kind of Wonderful, they're all curves. Everything's a curve. You sew the curve, then you trim it down. You sew another curve, you trim it down, then you put the blocks together with the curves in them. And that's my kind of quilting now.
Right.
Anything that has the curvy piecing to it, I'm all over that. And
Okay.
so I've kind of transitioned from your traditional blocks into I need each block to be unique, or I need there to be some curves in that, something that's going to keep my bag making attention.
Yeah. So has that spilled over into your bag making?
Absolutely. In fact, it's really funny because there's a couple of friends of mine that like to bug me about I have to have curves. I can't do things that aren't curvy or things like that. And there's a little bit of a passion there where I love nothing more than a perfect gusset going around my bag that just snugs it in right, and you've got those perfect gentle curves on the bottom or the top. And so my Michael Traveler bag, whenever I teach that one, it's got some ginormous curves as well as some
Mm.
more dramatic ones, and they swear there's 18 corners on it. Every time I teach it, they're like, "I've sewn 8 corners," and I'm like, "Don't worry, you got 10 more to go." And they're like, "How? How did you get this many in here?"
So, quick tip if you want to learn curves, check out the pattern.
Yes, exactly. And you know what?
Maybe I'll link it below.
I curve sewing is a bit of a passion, but also the top stitching for me, especially around the
Mm.
curves. And I learned that from putting patches on motorcycle vests for some of our
Oh,
not-for-profit groups. So I slow and steady, perfect top stitching.
yeah. Yes, top stitching can break a bag.
Oh,
You know, I've seen some amazing bags, and you zoom in to have a good look. It's like, oh, it looked perfect until you got in close, and it's like,
exactly.
slow down.
But
Would that be your top? What would be your top tip for stop? For I'm going to go off script here. What's your top tip for
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 top
top
stitching,
stitching?
you know what? I use what I call a stitch in the ditch foot or a guided
Right.
foot, and I move my needle over. And you always want to keep the edge of your seam beside the needle at the right point, not leading up to the needle.
Mm.
So I actually did a little video on YouTube, and it's on the Bernina Canada web YouTube channel, and it's all my top stitching top tips.
Okay. I'll get you to send me the link, and
Oh
I'll
yeah,
pop that down below. They're the sort of tips we need sharing.
exactly. And you know what? I love an accent top stitching. I am terribly notorious for always having
Mm.
an accent top stitching.
Yeah. I am trying to find a good variegated thread in at least a Tech 70 so that I can really display some cool top stitching.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's not easy here to
No, not
find.
New Zealand. You guys have some limitations there.
We do. So we just wanted to talk to you about your recent changes. Now, I know that you are now full time with UhOh Creations, and you did have a career in software.
Yes.
And how did that come about? Why the change?
So I have been doing UhOh Creations for about, I want to say 7, 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It started off as a hobby, but very quickly grew into people wanting my bags, me doing custom bags, not following patterns at all, and then just hacking patterns and pattern testing. And so when I found that I was spending a lot of time on Creations, I decided that I just needed a monetary goal to hit for revenue on the company. and then take a jump, take a leap. And
Mhm.
you know what? I did hit that goal last year, but the real deciding factor was my day job was getting quite stressful. And I just did need that break away from it. And I had talked to my boss even before that just about a leave of absence, just some
Mhm.
Tara time.
Yeah.
And it turned into, you know what? I was ready. I was mentally prepared. I had enough activities lined up at the beginning of this year that I knew that I could be fiscally responsible. Um, of course, we do have my husband with his job as well, but
Mhm.
you know, when you're used to the double income,
Yeah.
you're very
That's a
used to the double
change.
income.
That's a change.
So
Yeah.
we wanted to be very fiscally responsible around that and make sure that we knew where the income was going to be coming. And it was my biggest driver was making sure that the first 6 months was lined up. And
Right.
as those 6 months actually exploded this year, I knew my next 6 months was also lined up. So when I went to hand my resignation to my boss, he's like, "Are you sure? Like, really, are you?" Not that I don't hope it's not going to go well, but my boss and his boss all they decided, you know, maybe just a leave of absence. And so I am still on a leave of absence from work. So I do have a job to go back to, and I have that safety net, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But initially, it was a 6 month leave of absence, which would have been the beginning of this month. I'd be returning, and we did extend it to a 1 year leave of absence. And so I still have that opportunity. I have that safety net. But even my husband has commented that my stress levels are much better. I'm a happier person. I'm sleeping better, except in our heat, which I can't complain about to some people because yeah,
Yeah.
this heat is nothing compared to what others get.
But it's what we get used to.
Exactly. It's it was a huge change, and even to this day, I find myself filling my day more and more with my shop, my designing, my computer work than I do sewing, and I still feel guilty coming into my sewing room and just sewing during the day. I just can't mentally get past that, but
Yeah.
it's amazing.
But that's your job now.
And my husband
That's
keeps
your job.
reminding me, that's the job. Go sew. And I'm like, but I feel like I'm cheating.
Now, long may that feeling last.
Right?
So, what I hear you saying is that you planned it.
It was
You
fun.
had enough support. You planned it to make sure. Now, I'm sure you wouldn't suggest someone just go and pack up their job on Friday and say, I'm done, I'm making bags.
Well, unless you do have that winning lottery ticket.
Hmm. Oh, and then I'm buying all the vinyl I want from the States.
Right? I want a big crate. Pack it in the crate, ship it my way. I'm ready.
I'm waiting on the dock.
Exactly. But no,
So, we can.
it's a planning thing. It's a making sure you have your ducks in a row. And I'm a huge planner, like
Right.
huge planner. I've always been that person. Even when working on Mini Penelope, I did like 4 layouts of coloring pages before I figured out how I was going to do this. And then I mapped out all the cutting lists and I have Excel spreadsheets for my quilts. So
Well, that's the good thing with your background is everything is organized and on paper or on the screen, I should say.
exactly on the screen.
But you obviously wear many hats because I've looked at your website. If anyone hasn't seen the amazing things on Tara's website, go check it out, what she does. So you teach at retreats, you go to retreats, you teach other things as well, you design bags. What does a typical day look like for you,
There's typical
if there's
days.
such a thing?
Is there typical? Oh, so of course I try to start my day with checking my emails and seeing what's outstanding and I have my day job was Microsoft. I was a Microsoft consultant, so I use all my Microsoft tools. So I have a Microsoft To Do, which I'll schedule things into the specific days. I have my Outlook calendar that I'll tag emails and schedule them for specific days. Otherwise, procrastination hits in and you just don't do things. Um, but a typical day, I start with my emails, I check those out, see what's going on. From there, I might have to do some documentation for upcoming classes. I might have some organizational things on travel pieces. I may have um, some collaborations that I'm trying to schedule, that kind of thing. Right now, I'm very focused on getting everything organized for my upcoming Great Alberta Bagoneer Getaway that's happening in the fall. because tickets go on sale August 1st. And so
I want to come.
it's so much fun. You should totally come one year.
Oh.
And this year we're doubling that retreat. So we're not just doing a weekend retreat like we normally do. We're doing a weekend retreat and then we're doing a weekday one immediately after because we sell out so quick. So
Yeah.
I'm coordinating with the hotel right now, making sure I've got my numbers down so my ticket prices are accurate, working on getting the activity together. I have a retreat I'm attending as an instructor next month, so making sure I know what kind of projects I'm going to have on my plate. I've got the following month a tour across Ontario I'm doing with Bernina. So I'm coordinating with 6 different shops there, classes at each. Some are 2 days of 2 different classes, some are 2 days of one class. So trying to coordinate all of those. And when I do a class, I have documentation done up for the store for to hand out to attendees for pre-work. So interfacings and knowledge about these items and tools to bring to class. And each class is different depending upon the pattern. So then I also hand them a package, some photos, some information, the material requirements for the project they're working on. So even just a class is quite substantial.
Mm.
Of course, there's reaching out to get my patterns printed on paper because I sell them wholesale to quilt shops. So I don't sell paper patterns on my website. I don't do direct sale on that, just PDFs.
Right.
But any quilt shop can reach out to me and I will sell them wholesale paper patterns of my designs so that they can sell them in shops. And so that's a heavy lifting one because I have to stay on top of
Yeah.
my printer, which is a full-time job some days. And then when I
Yeah.
get them, you have to do the count. You have to validate that your 1 inch square is still 1 inch.
Yeah. Definitely.
I once had an order come in that had been printed without any yellow ink, the whole order. So let me tell you, my colors were a little off.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of
Oh.
heavy lifting there. And then I have to do all the folding and the stuffing of the plastic sleeves so that they can go to groups. Um, Quilt Canada, I just taught and lectured at Quilt Canada. And when I do a lecture, I always try to find something new. So even if I've taught at a guild, even if I've lectured at a guild, chances are my next presentation, I know I talked to you already. I'm going to throw something new in there and I'm going to find a new nuance to that. So that means I have PowerPoint presentations for my lectures that have new content and changes and things like that. And
So I'm hearing a lot of your business is on your screen and planning
it
work.
really is. And then there's the designing.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of pattern designers that sit in their room and I want to call it draping fabric from the fashion industry, but it's on
Mm.
bags. I don't. I start in
Mm.
Adobe Illustrator. I start with pattern
Yep.
pieces and I start with measurements and I start with designing digitally and then I print up random pattern pieces and mark the crap out of them and
Well, I'm really pleased to find someone else who's like me. The first thing for my design is the pattern
yes,
pieces. And because I know the math and I know the program. And I don't think I've ever changed a pattern piece. My instructions are another issue,
how it goes together.
but the pattern piece is getting it right first because in my head, that's how it looks and that's how it fits.
Exactly.
So I'm glad to find
And
someone
it's
else.
so funny because so few people digitally design first before they come into
Yeah.
things. And Michael's a really, really great example. My Michael Traveler, where I have the strap anchors and the cargo pocket with the flap, I laid out about 8 different ideas for the front of my Michael Traveler before I settled on that all in Illustrator, where I'd draft different strap anchors all at scale. I'd put the different hardwares on there at scale. I before I finally settled, and it's
Yeah.
all drafted that way.
I've got a little bit OCD lately and I've been taking pictures of hardware
Hmm.
rather than, and actually putting those on my pattern pieces so I can see what is actually going to look the best.
Yes, that's basically what I'm doing, except I'm drawing them.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of I don't have them to draw. I can download pictures because I can't get a lot of them. So I have to sort of work off what other people
Oh,
can get.
definitely.
Yeah. But it's yeah, it gives you another side to designing, doesn't
It
it?
does. And there,
Yeah.
as you said, there is a lot of digital work, and that doesn't even have to do with the social media side. Forget about
And
that. Like,
honestly, your social media input is so valuable to the bag making community. I often come along a post and I go, oh, I've got to have to look at this. And I go, oh, Tara's made it. Tara. So I just move on because you have done your research and you're giving information that comes from a place of knowledge, not just a reaction. Because there's a lot of false information
And
in the bag
it's
making
so
community.
easy to knee jerk react to every post out there. And I'm not saying I
Mm.
don't knee jerk react sometimes, but I generally delete it before I hit enter.
It's a good tip
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
I'll always write an answer out. And then there's some days where I'm like, don't engage. Just don't engage and
Yeah.
delete the whole thing and I'm out.
Yeah. And don't go
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've
Yeah.
taken courses on copyright and trademark
Mm.
and patents. I've educated myself on the digital programs I use, and I've got that background in project management and software consulting that really drives a lot of my knowledge. And I've taught a lot of classes.
Mm.
So I know how people react to things. And even in my software side of things, at the end of a project, I was the one rolling it out to the end users and training them. So I've had years of experience of training people. So I'm
Because
used to it.
a bit of background on that, Tara, like your job, if I get it right, was you were basically the liaison between the developers and the end user of a
Yeah,
product or a software product. That's correct,
that's
isn't
right.
it? So a lot of problem solving and a lot of negotiation skills would have been
That's a good
involved.
point. The negotiation skills. So typically my projects, I'd have a project manager who's technically overseeing things, but I know the software and I know the development and I understand and I communicate with the users, the client. And I'm also responsible for communicating from those end users back to the developers when there's bugs or when things aren't going wrong. And I sit with the developers and troubleshoot a best plan to fix that before they go and make the code. So my last
Yeah.
project, it was a US based project and we were rolling out the software to thousands upon thousands of people. Like I'd be in a training session where I'd have 5,000 people on the call, and some of them couldn't get into the meeting. And so, right down to the basics of using some basic computer skills, let alone the custom software. And then if they encounter a bug, well, how are we making that happen again? Because I can't just tell the developer the screen went blue. Well, what did
Yeah.
you do to
Yeah.
get the screen to go blue? And how can we prevent that from happening in the
Stop it
software?
going blue. Mm. Yeah.
So,
I think I've got another niche you could fill, and I think you need to jump in on bag tests and be the liaison between the designer and the testers.
you know what? It's funny because I have done that. I do technical editing. That's another side hustle to my hustle.
Right?
I do offer technical editing to designers, and after the testers have gone through and come up with some things, if the designer isn't comfortable with some of these edits or needs that extra set of eyes on things, then I go through with a fine-tooth comb the entire thing, checking the measurements, going through the techniques, because my brain can put it together as I read it. There's very seldom that I actually have to make the bag at that point because it's just that technical editing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's and
Yeah.
I can
It's needed. I'm in test at the moment and I've got a family thing going on and I should have cancelled the test, right? Like I should have just put it on hold. But the testers are coming up with these ideas and I thought, well, I did think I did that. But in my reactive state, because of where I'm at in my head, I'm like, yes, I'll throw that in, I'll throw that in. I'm like, oh my goodness, this pattern is just blown out
exploded.
to exploded. And I thought, okay, I need someone who's not making it. Was I'm going to
Yeah.
message you after this.
Well, the other part of that is as a designer, we each have an image or a style and a
Mm,
niche. I can make the exact same pattern as you. And the way our
mhm.
patterns would read and the way our layouts are and the way we do our diagrams are going to suit two different audiences every time.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so being
Mm.
true to what your niche is, that is huge. Absolutely huge.
I think I think the problem is with this one, it's not my niche. The pattern is not my niche. So I'm going outside of my normal comfort zone, which is causing the problem, which is why we need someone like yourself to check it through. Do you know what I
Abs-
mean? Because you know your niche, you know it like the back of your hand, and you're comfortable with it. You can just do it. So that's another bow to your string then. So, or another string to your
yeah.
bow. See, I got it backwards.
Another string on it. Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't have a typical routine then. So it just goes. So where do you find time for your bag designing and all of
You
this, or
know,
your pattern
eventually,
designing?
once I've got a design in my mind, I have to turn off social media. I have to turn off the devices. I have to either sit outside with my laptop or go to the camper with my laptop and ignore the world and just do it. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be honest, a pattern, I could bang out a brief instruction in a day, top to bottom. I could have my brief layout completely done with my plan. It's the refinement from there and the
Right.
diagrams
Yeah.
and the photo edits and the,
Mm-hmm.
but really it's about
Yeah.
turning off the other people,
Yeah.
taking a day
So it's a
away.
matter of timing sometime for that,
Yeah,
isn't it?
taking a
Yeah.
day away from
Yeah.
social media, to be honest, or putting an
Yeah.
auto notification on my phone saying, I'll get back to you later. And I'll even have friends
Yeah.
message me and I'll be like, no, I'm not today. Not
Not
today.
today. Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing to learn, and I've had to learn with looking at the business as a business, not a hobby and something fun to do, is that I've got to get strict with myself and what I can do and what I can't do. Is that something that you would agree with?
Absolutely. Recognizing your limits, recognize those limits, and set the time aside for those. So I mentioned earlier that part of my day
Mm.
is scheduling items for when it needs to be done, that kind of thing. Typically, we have two deadlines. We have the want to get it done by deadline, and we have the have to get it
Yeah.
done by deadline.
Yeah.
Always schedule
They're
the
not the
wanna.
fun ones.
Always, always. And assume that that is the gotta have it done by deadline. Even if it's not, just
Yeah.
you have to mentally put yourself in that place because otherwise everything's going to be
Yeah.
last minute. We're natural procrastinators. We are pros at it as humans. It doesn't
Yeah.
benefit us.
And that plays with the mind long term.
Oh,
Yeah. Long term, you
you
can't keep
can't.
doing that. It's fine for short term, and it used to be fine 30 years ago.
You know what?
We'll say 30.
Everything nowadays is an instant turnaround. PDF purchases. We
Mm.
want our pattern right now, which is why we don't go to the quilt shop or the fabric shop to get our pattern. We want to print
Mm.
it, we want to be sewing it, and we want to do it right now.
Yeah, we don't have to wait by the letterbox,
Exactly.
which used to be a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for some zippers
Yeah.
to arrive to work on this backpack for my niece. It was the most painful wait in the world. I'm like, can't you just email that over?
Yeah. I think I'm getting old waiting for the post.
Exactly. Exactly. And then I use the term snail mail to my niece, and she's like, pardon? And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
what?
honey, it's called snail mail. And she's like, no, that's mail.
See, that's mail. No, it's snail mail compared to what we do. So, with that in mind, would you suggest people have separate emails or bank accounts, or what do you think?
You know what? If you're doing a business, keeping them isolated is a really, really important part of the process. So I ran UhOh Creations with the same bank account as my personal one for years, but just last year I separated my bank accounts. Everything's so much easier. I've always had an UhOh Creations email address, and that just allows me to focus those emails that are business related into one area and funnel that into one area.
Mhm.
And then my personal one, I probably get 100 different subscription emails every day, and
Yeah,
I'm trying to unsubscribe, but it
yeah,
means that my personal email I can maintain just personal stuff or
yeah.
subscriptions or that kind of thing. So whenever possible, I do try to keep those isolated. I try to keep them apart because the business needs to be focused on. They have to
Right.
be responded to. My personal ones,
Yeah,
my uncle could message me all he
yeah,
wants.
yeah. So it's just being organized and keeping it sorted, isn't it? Yeah,
Exactly. It's kind of like the
yeah,
tools. Once you've got the tools, you're going to need the accounts as well. So keeping
yeah,
yourself organized is cumbersome.
yeah. But it's important. Yeah,
Exactly. And then
yeah,
documenting, of course, what you have because heaven forbid you get hit by a bus tomorrow.
yeah. True. And
Somebody needs access.
and tax is a whole different issue, which we won't go into because it's so different from every country that there's no way we could cover it in a bag chat. So
Exactly.
we'll just. But please see an accountant. That's my only advice. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have an accountant in my back pocket in my family, and it's vital
Yeah.
that I have that voice right there where, wait a minute, I'm about to do something,
Yeah.
quick phone call. Have a trusted advisor. I always say that there are professionals for everything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to my dentist to get my car fixed
No, true. And even though it might cost you a couple $100 to get the advice, it will save you more than that in the long run.
every
It is
time.
definitely worth it. So you've touched on some of the tools you use with your Microsoft products, but I do think to be productive, we do need to look at our tools. And I have started doing a 2 hour blocking in my diary, like blocking out periods of time. And if I don't get it finished in that time, it doesn't matter. I'll move that over. But that's all I've got for today. So can you run us through the tools? You
Yeah,
did mention a few before,
absolutely.
just in case anyone wants to write
All
them
right,
down.
so as a Microsoft person, I am a Windows computer person. Although I have an iPhone. Don't tell Microsoft.
We'll let you off.
I do use Microsoft Outlook, of course, for my email. I do have an Outlook email for UhOh Creations. I do use Microsoft Office, so that's Word, Excel, the general tools there. PowerPoint for my presentations. I can do almost anything in PowerPoint now. I use Microsoft To Do for my to-do list. And
Okay.
that is an app also on my iPhone then where sure I can have tasks in my iPhone, but I'll link them, I synchronize them up with To Do so that they're scheduled with my laptop and my phone. Because that's a struggle I have with the iPhone and the Windows laptop. Nothing connects.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They
No,
don't
they
talk to
really
each
don't. So
other. Yeah.
you need the tools that connect. And then I use OneNote for
Hmm.
um, travel, for client work, for such as I'm a Bag of the Month Club designer for August. When I have a meeting or I have dates or I have things to take notes on, they all go into Microsoft OneNote. And I have those categorized
Right.
by different activities, projects, clients, things like that. Um, I use Adobe Creative Cloud for all my designing. So InDesign is where you write the
Right.
pattern. Illustrator is where I draft all my pattern pieces and my diagrams. As I have those two connected, if I make edits in my Adobe Illustrator, when I open InDesign, I just click the update button and all my links to that file are updated. I don't have to match things back and forth.
Manually
So
do it.
that's
Yeah.
huge. And then my Adobe Creative Cloud also gives me my video editing, my photo editing, my everything on my phone and my laptop all tied together.
That's great.
The other tool I
Yeah.
use is Microsoft OneDrive. I'm a
Okay.
software consultant,
Yep.
so therefore everything's in the cloud.
Yeah.
Everything is
Yeah.
cloud based, which means when my computer creators, I had this happen a year and a half ago, all of a sudden my computer was done for, took it into my techie and he's like, we need a new computer.
Oh. Yeah. But yeah,
But
you've
he
got
had
it all.
offered to, of course, transfer it all over for me and could do that. And I'm like, no, I'm fine because the moment I log in on a new
Mm.
computer with my Windows account, everything syncs right in. There's no
Yeah.
files.
I've started to do that as
Yeah,
well. It's just not worth
yeah,
risking, especially when you've got a pattern backlog and you've got all your catalog of your main work files. If you lose those, you're going to have to recreate that
exactly.
pattern.
So it's all in the
So
cloud,
for designers,
all of it.
listen to that, put it on the cloud.
I do
Yeah.
not have,
There are several
I don't
different
have an external
options.
drive because then you have to manually update that. And it's only as good as where it's sitting. If you have a house fire, your external drive, your backups, your laptop, it's all gone.
I back up my drive from my hard drive occasionally. We go away in our
Mhm.
camper van. I don't have access or reliable
Yes.
access. I can
And that's the
do
other
that.
part is
Yeah.
all of those Microsoft products I use are accessible on my iPhone. So I open up OneDrive, I pull up the
Right.
pattern wherever I am, and I provide advice. I ran into one of my local quilt shops the other day, and these two ladies came out of the back room when they saw me in there, and they're like, "Oh, we're working on Louis, and we really are stuck at a spot." And
Ah,
I'm like, "Well, let's take a look."
yeah.
And I pulled up the pattern right in front of us on my phone, talked them through the step, then went into the back and just helped them with a step. But because I have it right
Yeah.
there,
Right
super
there.
easy.
Easy accessible.
And if it wasn't in
Yeah.
the cloud,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have that.
Yeah. You
Exactly.
wouldn't. So I think these tools are important because we can't keep it in our head and keep ourselves accountable or organized. I mean, it's fine if it's a hobby, but if we're looking at being a business, it's
You
pretty
have to act like
important.
a business.
So what
You have
about
to
your,
invest in the tools and you have to know, invest in yourself to learn the tools.
yeah, definitely. Even little things like updating your website. Now, is that something you do? Do you outsource
It's all
that?
me. So
It's
when it
all
comes to my
you.
website, I do use Shopify. I've been using Shopify since day
Mm-hmm.
one. I used to have an Etsy store, but with some of the challenges I had with Etsy being the extra fees, the advertising, a year ago they stopped allowing Canadians to collect GST separately on products. You then had to include it in the price.
Ah,
They just
yeah.
introduced another service fee for Canadians on Etsy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, a $12 pattern cost me about $5 on Etsy.
Yeah, I'm the
And
same. I'm this close to
and
pulling off
the
it. It's just
the
I'm getting
services
nothing.
aren't available for file delivery. So if a
Mm.
person's not on their laptop, they can't download their files. If you do an edit to the file, you can't send that out to people without doing it manually.
No,
So
that's very
I'm wholly on
frustrating.
Shopify. I've actually helped a couple of other pattern designers set their shops up on Shopify as well. And I use SkyPilot for all of my file delivery. So every time somebody gets an email saying a pattern was updated or thanks for your purchase, here's a download link, that's SkyPilot doing it. And then I use Flowdesk for my email newsletters. And so I've got,
Okay. So that links with your Shopify
it does
store,
a
does it?
basic link where it pulls the people in. People who say, yes, I want marketing, it'll
Right.
pull those in.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's really the extent of the integration with it.
I'm using WordPress and it's been working for me okay. The currency issue or the currency conversion issue, it's too messy. So I'm toying with
The
Shopify.
other one that you can consider is
Yeah.
Wix. I built a website on
Yes, that's what
Wix
I,
for
the
our
other one.
campground. We have a not-for-profit organization that runs the campground, even though it's owned by the municipality. So I was on the board and I built a new website on Wix for it. And I know that there's a lot of pattern designers and hardware companies that also use Wix too. So it's another tool.
Okay. I'll have a look. Yeah. I remember back in the day, I actually coded my first website when I was doing photography. Like I
Yep.
wrote the code. Yes, we used to have to type the
HTML,
code,
baby.
bit by bit. I
I
know. Don't ask me anything I
back
don't
in
normally.
high school did create so my job placement class was actually doing a website for a local not-for-profit organization. That was one of my classes in high school. So that's
Yeah. It was a real sense of achievement when it was done, and it looked pretty cool. It
you
was a
know
long time
what?
ago.
It's funny because that little bit of HTML from grade 11, grade 12 has given me so much knowledge
Mm-hmm.
in the software world and on my Shopify website. Like all of a sudden, if I need to
Yeah.
put a form on my page, I know that there's
Yep.
some basic HTML in there that I need to put these in between, and I know that little bit of coding.
Yeah.
World of difference.
Yep. And if something goes screwy, it sometimes and I just look at it. And go, oh, hang on, that doesn't look right. Like it's just yeah. But everything's changed so much. I don't know if I'd want to mess with it
No,
anymore.
the languages are completely different. I only play with the HTML
Yeah.
on the static pages, the ones that don't have dynamic
Yeah.
content or have products on them or things like
Yeah.
that. I keep it pretty basic now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many. I mean, talking about websites, a lot of people say they sell at markets and they sell on Facebook and they sell. Do you think it's advisable to find yourself a free website? Because there's plenty of options that do free
Hmm.
websites. Like you don't necessarily have your own domain, but if they're looking for something cheap, do you think that's a good
Absolutely,
option?
because if I can't do something online, chances are I'm not booking my appointment with you. If I
Yep.
can't book my
I
optometrist
hear you.
or my dentist or I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to show up.
Anything. Yep.
If I can't communicate with my service provider through a contact me page or something, if people don't respond to that,
Mm.
I'm probably not, I'm going to just walk away. So I feel it's so
And I,
important for our individuals to have that online presence if they are even selling locally, because all it takes is just one page. Who are you? What are you
mm-hmm.
doing? And why? And the why is just as
Yeah.
important in this day.
Because we like to know who we're dealing with because there's so many weird and wonderful things out there. It's really good to know who we're talking
Exactly.
to or who we're wanting to spend our money with. And also, I think there's this huge thing that we trust social media now. I'm not saying don't trust it, but if your account got hacked tomorrow, like I'm like, hang on, how much of my business is linked with Facebook? How much of my business is linked with Instagram? I need to get that off. It's a tool like other things, but I need to have my base business on my own website, that
Yes.
I own that information
So
and
you
those
can
lists.
also get like digital insurance nowadays for your website and for hacking and that kind of thing, but nothing is going to protect you from Facebook deciding to shut down your
Mm-mm.
page or your profile.
Yep,
And most people don't even realize that they're already infringing on the rights that you have on those. So if you think about a Facebook page, we all clicked the I agree checkbox. I
mm-hmm.
agree includes you're above 14 years of age. You are using your real name in your profile.
Yep,
You are not running a business
mm-hmm.
in that profile. You will use a page for that. How many people are
Yep,
infringing on those three things? And you click
yeah,
I agree. They
yeah,
have every right
yep,
to shut you down.
to shut you down. And there's very limited things, or there's lots of things when you've got your business page that it won't let you do as a business, or you can't join as a business. So I can totally understand
Yeah.
it happening, but they can decide just to shut you
You
down
are
whenever they
using
want.
their
Yeah,
software. And it's a tool. It is
yeah,
just a tool. And we
it's
have to
true.
remember that. These
And
tools are no different than my grandfather in the field using a plow. The day that the
yeah,
plow doesn't work is the day
exactly.
the plow doesn't work.
So with that in mind, with your social media, do you use any apps or anything with posting, or is that have you got something very set in mind, or is that not your
You know what?
not
It's
where
funny
that?
because as a software consultant, I did implement automatic posting through some tools for my clients back in the day. I
Yeah,
had implemented email marketing automation as well as web page lands and automation around the path a person would take through a website based upon their IP address going through these motions. I don't use any of that. So I understand how it's used. I could do it. I'm very control freaky when it comes to my computer stuff. I post when I want it
right.
posted. Now I will do scheduled posts through the
Mm-hmm.
tools available on Instagram and Facebook, but I have not
Yeah.
used any of the integrated tools to do that. I want you guys focused on what I'm doing today. So I just posted a
I
reel
think
yesterday or a video yesterday about me sewing outside on my patio. That was yesterday morning.
the other thing that might be good to mention here too is a lot of these integrated softwares are a risk, right? So as soon as you give a third party a link to your Google account, which is frustrating me because a lot of these ensure that you have to
Yeah.
log in with Google now as opposed to just signing in. Every one of those is a risk, and I think people need to read the software,
You
like
have to know
even allowing Facebook access to an app or whatever. Read
every
the
time.
fine print, and it's designed to be confusing and it's designed to make you just go, yeah, agree.
The
But
more
please
you
read the
read,
software
the more it
details.
makes sense. So if you read three of them, you're
Mm,
going to notice the things that repeat that make sense. It's those things that don't repeat
yes,
between different softwares where you're like, wait a minute, why do you all of a sudden need this?
yeah,
That's when you've got red flags. That's
yeah.
when you need to be aware.
And check the permissions. Like if it doesn't make sense to you, why does it need that permission? Don't download that app or don't connect
Exactly.
that app.
Well, even the
Yeah,
games people are
yeah,
playing on social media, it's asking you for your birthday for a reason. It's asking
mm-hmm,
you your mother's maiden
yep,
name for a reason. It's asking you your favorite color. How
mm-hmm.
many times have all these questions come up in your financial institute's list of
As
questions?
you, yep, as your secondary, or even with your two-factor authentication, now they're asking questions, and I'm like,
Yeah,
yep. So yes, let's be a little bit
exactly.
tech
We
savvy.
question it.
Yep,
Question
yep,
the status quo. I'm not
yeah,
saying don't
question
don't
it.
trust that they're
Yep,
doing what they're saying. I am saying just make sure that it makes sense.
yeah. And a lot of the times we don't need five apps
Hmm.
to do one job. Ask people what they're using and people who are in the know. So now you're going to get a whole lot of
What
messages.
about this
Tara,
program? Can I use this one?
okay, so can we go back, circle back to your designs? What's your inspiration for your designs other than your curves? Because you've talked about your curves on your quilts and stuff. But where does your inspiration for
So that
designs
can
come
come
from?
from almost anything. Um, Sometimes I'll be scrolling Pinterest and come across an idea, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that pocket. I need to put that on something,
Then you have to
right?
design a bag for the pocket.
I more than anything love function. I need something
Right.
that's functional and has a purpose. So my biggest things are duffel bags, backpacks, convertible bags,
Right.
things that serve a purpose in my life or in family members' lives. So the Louis waist pack, I got asked for that kind of a design over and over and over again in my little circle of family and friends.
Right.
And now I wear one.
But that is the key to business,
Exactly.
though. It's supply and demand, right? So the demand was there, so you solved the problem with a
Exactly.
solution.
My Keanu backpack. It has a laptop
Mm.
pocket on the back and then a big backpack component and a front small pocket. Well, small is relative. Um, that backpack was born out of me traveling so much with my laptop as a software consultant. I needed my laptop with me on the plane,
Right.
in a car, at the camper, and I needed a safe way to carry it. So a padded separate space in my backpack versus it just going into a sleeve in the backpack was my big function. And I carry the prototype for that to this day. And it's been 6 years
Okay.
since that one launched. I still carry that same prototype.
But I mean, you made the bag for your specific purpose, so it's got to
Exactly. And
work,
then I
right?
generalize it.
It's not like,
So as much as I
yeah,
needed it to fit this specific
right.
laptop, well, what are the measurements of a 15-inch standard laptops out there? Let's make sure
Mm-hmm.
that we're encompassing all of those. Make sure that the tools I'm using, the hardware or the zippers, those kind of things are commonly accessible. Things like
Right.
that. So a lot of my inspiration
Yeah.
comes from day to day. My husband needed a cooler bag because he was carrying around a reusable bag at the campground. It was a pink dino bag. So nearby we have Drumheller, which has a dinosaur park. So one of the reusable bags they hand out had a big
Right.
T-Rex on the front of it. So he would carry this
Oh,
reusable
how
dino
cool.
bag with his beer going to his buddy's sites. It was so cute. So everybody
But it
knew
makes
that was
sense.
Dale's bag, the dino bag. So I made
Yeah.
him a cooler bag that zipped across the top. It was a black denim. And then I appliqued a dino on the front of that, a pink dinosaur. So he still had a pink
Oh,
dino bag. And
that's
if he
cool.
forgets
That's
his
very
cooler bag
cool.
at anybody's site, it just ends up back at our site because everybody knows the pink dino is Dale's
Whose
bag.
it is?
Thing I'll do is I'll design it around flexibility. So having
Right.
features that you could add or change. So the Bailey backpack, he's a little backpack. I keep bringing my hands too low and you can't see that. Just a little backpack, two sizes, but three different fronts
Yeah.
and two different strap lengths. Because
Right.
you know what? We're not all the same. And if we're making bags, we
No.
want it to be unique. That is the whole purpose in us making.
Yeah.
So,
So, do you have any bags close by that you can show
you
us?
know what's funny is I don't have a lot here, but I am working with Northcott Fabrics right now. They're when they
Mm-hmm.
do fabric launches, they take patterns and they'll take that design and put the new fabrics on them and sell that
Mm-hmm.
pattern so that stores can kit them, do that. And with my paper patterns, the Chris Satchel is one that Northcott has used a couple of times with fabrics designed by the Natural Born Quilter. And we're going to start expanding that. So it looks really boring, but I had to make the Chris Satchel in a plain gray fabric, which is actually
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Do you know that actually looks really cool? Now, I'm sorry, but I want some really contrasted top stitch, and that would be
Wouldn't it?
very, very cool. I love that look of plain with real feature
Well, what they're going to
contrast top
use this
stitch.
for is once I've taken the photos, their graphic designer will be able to overlay the right
Yeah,
prints
yeah,
to this bag.
yeah,
So this is the one that I need to photograph to allow them to do that overlay.
yeah. But doesn't it show the design so well when it's
It
in
really
plain
does. And
fabric?
I hate solid.
Sometimes,
I am the first person to
right.
say just put some
Yeah,
dots on it or some lines or some detail of some type. But it looks so good.
but sometimes the design just really pops when it's
Really does.
clear.
It really does. So I have
It does.
my niece is visiting me right now from British Columbia, and I promised her a new school backpack. So of course we're not using a pattern, but we took a design that she loved online and it's got a few components.
Okay.
We have the main zipper section. We have a second zipper section. I'm doing a totally different pocket on the front, and I'm adding the laptop pocket from my Keanu backpack to this. So this one,
Yep.
ooh, just knocked you around. I just I just
We'll
finished the
survive.
back of it, and this is where you're going to see that contrast stitching. So this is the laptop pockets section, but you've got the hot pink.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. With a zip pops really, doesn't it? It's gorgeous.
So that's that back laptop section. And then this,
She
oh
is going
yes,
to love Auntie
this
Tara.
is the
Yeah.
gusset for the main body. So we've got the handle on the top, the hot pink with the
Mm-hmm.
stitching, and then the water bottle pocket. So that's what I'm working on right now. But I also have right now preparing for the launch of the Bag of the Month Club. So August 1st, I have a
Of
pattern coming
course.
out with Bag of the Month Club.
Yes. I signed up
You're
last
going to
night.
love it.
You know, the thing about the Bag of the Month Club, it stretches you to do bags you wouldn't normally do. Okay. I'm not saying any of the designs are bad. I'm saying there may be not what you normally make. And so it gives you a bit of an incentive to make a new bag. So you're learning skills you wouldn't normally accumulate because these are
Well,
bags you wouldn't.
especially if you're buying a similar size or a
Yes.
similar style every time you buy a pattern, then you might find yourself in a rut of techniques and knowledge and or even from the same designers
Yeah.
every time. There
That,
are
yeah. We won't say that though because we just, yeah.
okay, if you're
But
always
yes,
buying from
no,
my site,
you're
I'm
right.
not going to complain.
But no, you're right because we all
Exactly.
have our
Well,
niche, right? So if all you do is buy my patterns, you'll get to learn how I do things, but you need to learn how
exactly.
other
We had
people do
already
things.
discussed how it did the exact same design. You're going to have two
Mm.
totally different patterns because my brain doesn't think the same way as yours. And there's 18 million ways to put a bag together.
Oh, yeah. Even though they look
Exactly.
exactly the same. So I think it's a great opportunity to get your feet wet in different areas, and you've got a really good platform to bounce off others if you're having problems. So you're up
I
first then if you're the
am.
beginner
So
pattern, are you?
August 1st, my pattern launches.
I'm looking forward to that. Can we have your quick tip for new
You
bag
know what? For a
makers?
new bag maker, recognize your skills and how they can be applied. Because if a designer says a pattern is advanced, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means
Mm.
you may need to think it through more. You may need to apply your skills in a different way. So recognize if you sew, you have some very transferable skills, some very distinct skills. And that is getting you further and further ahead every time you use them.
Yeah, it's good advice. Definitely. Yep. The whole pattern grading, beginner, advanced, etc., kind of does my head in a little bit because we've all got different skills that make us able to do something that maybe you shouldn't be able
Right?
to do. Do you know what I mean? So don't be put off. Yeah. Even if there's a video, watch it before you decide to make it.
Well,
Yeah. I think with
I'll
the
be
right
honest, I
information, we
don't
can do it.
grade my patterns beginner to advanced. But if somebody asks me what type of level it is, I will hand some information out. But an advanced pattern could just be there's a lot of pieces, not that it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or an advanced pattern
Yeah.
could be very few
Yeah.
pieces, but holy cow, you're going to need some wine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. Don't you always?
most of the time.
Or it could be that it's written with not as much detail. I have seen a lot of that lately. They're putting advanced on it because they don't want to write all the finer details and would expect you to know how to do a zipper pocket and expect you to know how to do these things. And so don't write the
And you know what? I
instructions in
came
the
across a
pattern.
garment that I
So,
made recently where they're like, now go make a welt pocket. Um,
right,
I'm going to need a little more than that.
classic.
They look
I
so
love
pretty.
welt pockets, but I have a tailoring
There you
background, so
go.
I love welt
There you
pockets.
go.
Yeah,
And I
so
gotta say, don't limit yourself. Bag making is just one part of the sewing world. Once you can bag make, you can make a jacket. You can quilt. Mhm.
yeah, just get familiar, with your machine and your materials and
Oh my gosh, the machine makes a world of
yeah,
difference. And I don't mean the machine itself. I mean the relationship between you and your machine. Exactly.
knowing
And
your machine.
understanding when it's having an issue and when
Yeah.
you need to address that and when it needs a cleaning.
You mean when we take the bobbin casing out and clean underneath? I think that's a whole
Oh my
bag chat on
goodness,
that,
yes.
isn't it? I mean,
My
on machine
industrial
maintenance.
machine, the moment the bobbin gets low, I can hear it. I can totally hear it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It changes. changes. Yeah.
I
And
can
I'm
do
like,
it.
I've got to get to the end because you know it's about to go. But do you stitch faster?
Um,
Because what's weird is I've got this psychological thing that if I go faster, it won't run out quicker.
you might have a psychological issue, but
Just a small one. Oh, look, this has been really exciting. Now, have we got any future patterns coming up apart from because the bag of the
it is a
month
new
is a
pattern.
new pattern, but it goes on sale a month or three
So
months
in
later?
three
Is that
months,
how it
I'll be able
works?
to release it publicly. And then I
Right.
have publicly
Okay.
promised what I'm calling the Pedro backpack. I designed the bags for the TV show The Last of Us, and the backpack that Joel
Yep.
carries is one that I'm adapting to be made on a domestic machine with domestic friendly materials and everything. So that one's taking some work and has been in the works for about 8 months to a year, somewhere in there.
Right.
But I am working on it. I promise it is coming, and it will be called
That's
the Pedro
awesome.
backpack.
The Pedro backpack. We will look forward to that. Now, for people to contact you, we've got your website address, which we'll link before. Which is the best place? Your website, socials? How
If
should people
looking
get in touch
for
with
me
you?
to respond to something, I highly recommend just sticking with the contact me page on my website. It sends an email. I can schedule that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Messages on Facebook on the business pages don't always send us notifications. So
They're
chances
bad.
are
Yeah.
I'm going to respond faster to the email. And
Hmm.
my Facebook group, Sewing UhOh Creations Patterns, I get
Okay.
notifications of everything. And
And I'll put
awesome.
all those links down below. So check those out, guys. And go check out her page because she has got some amazing stuff. If you are close by, you've got to attend one of her retreats. Attend it for me, and let me know what's
We have so
happening
much fun.
because
So
it's a
much
little bit of a distance. Oh, I'm sure they are great. It has been awesome chatting with you today, Tara. Thank you so much for your expertise and just the
thanks for
fun chat.
having
It's been
me.
great. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Tara, for sharing those amazing insights. Didn't we learn so much? And I'm sure some of those tips we can all put into practice, whether we're a part time bag maker or full time, or whether we want to go full time in the future. Hey, we've got some really exciting episodes coming up, and I'm sure you don't want to miss one. If you like what you've seen today, please hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, and give us a thumbs up. The algorithm does like it. And hey, thanks for watching today, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Bag Chat as much as I've enjoyed my chat. Have a great day.